Hi guys, hope you're all keeping well. Doing a quick little video on my E500 today. So my name's Bilal. You would have perhaps seen me on some of the Facebook groups, so the 124 Enthusiasts Facebook group and the E500 Facebook group, and also the 500E board. So no, thanks to everyone for keeping those forums and Facebook groups alive, to all the moderators. Sorry, it's just a bunch of traffic here I can't get through. But anyway, I mean, look, there's no kind of real agenda today. It's just to show you my car in more detail, and to give you an idea of what it's like to live with an E500. Mine is it's a 94, so it's an E500. It's an E500 Limited, which is great. And maybe I'll start off with telling you a bit about this car, this particular one. So it's finished in sapphire black. It's got the grey sort of painted leather. So some of them had green painted leather, some of them came with red painted leather, but it's a sapphire black one. Supposedly is 500 units of this car. So I think 10,497 built of E500Es, and then yeah, so 500 of those were limiteds. Maybe a little bit about how I came across this car. And look, I mean, I've owned a bunch of 500Es, E500s over the years. But this one was really one that I was looking for. I'd always wanted a limited, and for me, the limited is almost the perfect one. We all know the kind of E60, and then there's various other stuff from Brabus. E60 AMG is really the one that most 124 owners want to own, but given their current price is just gone a bit crazy. I think probably 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, they were sort of reasonably priced. Now, to get a good E60, you're talking kind of 50, 60, 70,000 pounds plus, and then it depends, is it a converted car, is it a limited? So I thought a kind of an achievable dream, if you will, is the E500 Limited, and this is exactly what I bought. So a bit about kind of buying this car. It was a bit of a mission, really, if I'm going to be honest. I had a 91 500E, a very, very nice car. It was in a flat black, really gorgeous car, and I wanted to move it on because I'd had so many 500Es. I wanted to sell it on, so I sold it to a good friend of mine, Jay Manick. Many of you all over the forums and in the car scenes will know Jay, you'll recognise Jay. He's a great guy, he's got lots of cars, he knows heaps about the older sort of generation, the older kind of 124s, 126s, 129s, 107s, and look, Jay's a kind of, he's a great guy, and so he bought that car from me. He was looking for a pre-facelift car. Mine seemed to fit the bill. So by the way, I live in Dubai. If the surroundings are not familiar, Dubai in the United Arab Emirates in the Middle East. So we've got blazing temperatures today, 46 degrees centigrade outside, very, very hot, particularly to run these old cars, but luckily my AC is holding up pretty nicely, so I'm pretty happy, and I'm comfortable in the E500. So yeah, so Jay bought that car, and then it must have been maybe a few weeks or a couple of months later, I was just scrolling through Instagram, and an E500 came up. So I always looked for the tag E500, just out of interest. I wasn't looking to buy a car. I was just curious to see, are there any kind of new owners, or any new cars, to see some nice photos. And this one came up, and to be honest, the photos were not great. And when I clicked it, it was owned by a Kuwaiti company. It was a Kuwaiti kind of motor trader in Kuwait, the state of Kuwait, and they had this car in their stock. So and by the way, my job, so although I'm based in Dubai, I'm continuously traveling. So pre-COVID times, I would be traveling on a weekly basis, out to Kuwait, out to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, wherever the kind of work takes me. So I'm kind of always in and out of the Middle Eastern countries. My base is Dubai, but on a weekly basis, I do tend to travel. So I sent the sort of seller a message, and I said, look, I mean, and didn't say anything about the car. I just said it was a 94 E500. It didn't say it was a limited. It didn't have a sashes number. It didn't even have any details about the mileage. Nothing. Just 94 E500. Some really bad photos. One of them was of the interior, so I immediately recognised the painted leather inserts on the E500 Limited, and I thought, well, this could be an E500 Limited, could be the real deal, or it just could be something which has been modified. It's not uncommon in the Middle East. So I sent him a message, and I didn't hear back for a while, and then I got a message back from the seller, and he said, yep, the car's still available, this is the price. And by the way, it wasn't cheap. This is the price. He was actually really nice. He sent me lots of kind of high resolution photos from the outside. Then he got me sort of videos of the interior and the car starting up and all the kind of basic stuff, but he himself didn't really know much about the car. It was something that had kind of come into his stock from someone he knew. They mainly specialised in newer cars, so they had a lot of kind of G-Wagons, and they had kind of Ferraris and Lamborghinis, lots of exotica. This really wasn't something they usually deal with, so it wasn't like a kind of a modern classic type of dealer. It was just that this had kind of come into their stock. So look, I found it interesting, and he frankly couldn't tell me much about the car. There's a bit of a language barrier. He spoke Arabic. Arabic was his primary language. English is my primary language because I'm from the UK. And yeah, we managed to communicate, but there wasn't really an opportunity to elaborate on all the details. And in Kuwait, I mean, I don't know anyone that deals with old cars or that inspects old cars. I mean, it was a bit of a risk. Anyway, so I had a trip coming up, a business trip to Kuwait, and this was kind of a few weeks after now. So I thought, look, I mean, why not go and check out the car? It's a good opportunity to check out the car. I booked an earlier flight. I got out there a couple hours earlier, and I landed at the airport. I had the shop's address, and I just decided to turn up unannounced. I didn't want him to kind of prep the car or warm up the car, whatever second-hand car dealers do. Some of them, they're a bit kind of spurious, and you can't really trust them, especially out here in the Middle East. Sometimes they're pretty dodgy. So I got the car. So I got to Kuwait. I jumped in an airport cab, and I made my way over, and I got to the dealership, and it was closed. Although it was kind of like 5 p.m, but things in the Middle East tend to work more in the evening. People tend to go out when it's less warm. And so I got there, and I looked at the car, and there was no one there to show me the car, but I had a look in it. It was sitting at the back of the lot, and it was lovely. It was and I was very, very surprised actually at the vehicle itself. It was in great condition. From what I could see from the outside, the whole front of the car was covered in a sort of clear brass. or kind of protective film. The headlamps were correct, they were proper E500 ones. The alloys were kind of standard for the limited. They were the Evos. What else? The brakes, everything was stock, like it was a stock car, apart from this steering wheel, this gear shifter, and the brake discs, which I'll show you from the outside. I'll show you what the brake discs look like. So look, I mean, that surprised me, and I thought, wow, I mean, this is fantastic, you know. It's an E500 limited, and it was getting dark by now. I did then call the garage, and he kindly sort of sent someone over. They kind of grabbed me the keys. The car fired straight up practically immediately. It started up. The infrared locking worked. Everything worked, and more importantly, I think the engine just sounded really strong. So it kind of just started from bone cold with no issues. And it just started, you know, it just roared to life, and there was no rattling, no chain slack, just nothing. Sounded nice and tight as well. Let it warm up, couldn't take it for a drive because it was right at the back of the showroom. But you could tell, and I mean, you might be able to tell in the video, the car was in good condition. The wood was all nice. It was all kind of really dark. And yeah, I mean, it seemed to be a well looked after car. Of course, all of these cars are going to have some form of deferred maintenance. It's not something you can get away from. But for a kind of 94 car, yeah, it was definitely looked good. So at this point, I was kind of thinking, well, do I want this car? Is this the car that I want? I was kind of tired of sort of buying and selling cars, and I told myself that if I buy another E500, it's going to be for keeps. Like, I'm not going to sell this car now. And I suppose the decision in my head is that, can I buy this car and keep it? Would I be satisfied with it? And look, I mean, that was a question that was easy to answer. You know, I mean, of course I wanted it. I love 124s, and the E500 really is the kind of the cream of the crop. And then this being a limited on top was great. So I grabbed the VIN number, ran the VIN through, and it all kind of checked out. It's got the limited option code. What's actually even more interesting about this one is that it's actually a Russian delivery. So it's a 94 model, so some of them are 95s. This one's a 94, and it was originally delivered in Russia. Looking at all the paperwork, this car must have spent a lot of time in Japan. It's got the old Japanese books, and a couple of old service records. It's got various stamps, like in the slam panel, in the engine bay, which indicate that the car is actually was spent a lot of time in Japan. So what I suspect happened is that it was a Russia delivery from day one. It may have gone to Japan when it was first kind of ordered, if you will. The level of demand in Japan was quite high for these cars at the time. Then it obviously went to Kuwait, and I'll tell you more about that story in Kuwait. So it went to Kuwait, and then it's now in Dubai, and hopefully, fingers crossed, one day the car will come back to me to the UK, because I mean, I want to keep this car, and if I relocate back to the UK, I want to take the car with me, or I might just ship the car back and keep it as a sort of toy that I can keep in the UK. Because I mean, look, the summers here and stuff are not too friendly, especially for old cars. Although this one is keeping temperature perfectly, you know, touch wood. So yeah, I mean, look, I haven't really decided what I'm going to do with it. With all the COVID stuff going on at the moment, it's not really a decision I want to make. I don't want to send something through shipping and then it gets lost. So look, I mean, we'll make that decision later. But anyway, it seems what happened after kind of doing more checks on this car, it seems like the car was sold through a Japanese auction, I think around 2015, if I'm not wrong. So 2015 or 2014, the car was sold in Japanese auction. It then went to Kuwait. So we've got some Kuwaiti paperwork to suggest that it went around 2014. Then in Kuwait, the car drove probably about 200 or 300 kilometers, and that's it. So it ran 200 or 300 kilometers in Kuwait. It barely did any mileage. From what I understand, from what the seller told me, a doctor owned the car. The doctor was a friend of the car dealership, sort of family friend sort of thing, and he never drove the car, and he wanted to offload it, and that's how it got to the garage. So yeah, barely driven in Kuwait, and then furthermore, the paperwork with the car suggests that in 2009 or 2010, the car had only done 2,000 kilometers since then. So now it's sitting on 95,000 kilometers. I think I bought it in 93 or 94. At about 91,000 kilometers, that was the mileage back in 2009. So basically, the car had hardly been driven or hardly turned a wheel in the last decade, in the last 10 years. And that was evident by looking at the filters and stuff. They're all kind of clean, but pretty old. The pollen filter, I put up a photo a little while ago, we took that out. We changed the plugs, obviously changed the oil, the drive belt, the differential oil. There's a lot more to come on this car, it's just starters. But that just gives you an idea of the type of ownership it's had. And look, I mean, it's in good condition. I wouldn't say it's perfect. There are a couple of things I need to do. For example, the stereo is an aftermarket one, which also doesn't work, so I've disconnected it. It's got a phone that someone added at some point. It's not a Mercedes phone. It's kind of aftermarket phone. Maybe that needs taking out, but then it will leave marks, so I'm probably just going to leave it. Got an aftermarket steering wheel. But apart from that, it really is a nice car, and from a driving perspective, it drives lovely. There is a problem with the rear suspension. The rear suspension is basically, well, it's got the SLS hydro legs as shocks. So one of them's gone bad. The driver's side one has gone bad. Over certain bumps, you can hear it kind of knocking. So that needs replacing. I've got a pair of those to go in. I think at the same time probably change the front shocks as well, and then yeah, just giving it a full service really. I mean, transmission oil probably could do with a change, only because I don't know when it was last done. All the ignition parts